The 2022 Alberta Air Tour will be taking place this Saturday, June the 4th, here in the city of Lloydminster at the municipal airport. And I'm now joined by Shane Getson, MLA of Lac Ste. Anne, who's going to be leading the event. So Shane, thanks so much for coming on today and having a chat with me to talk more about it.
Well, thank you very much for your interest in the tour, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So for those who don't know too much about the Alberta Air Tour, can you just give an insight into what that is all about?
Well, it started off back in 2019 because everything was shut down because of COVID. Us personal pilots, so general aviation, we were still allowed to pretty much conduct business as usual. So what we wanted to do is twofold: bring some smiles to faces out there to people because they could get out to an open air venue and see some airplanes and interact. The second one, shamelessly, was to promote aerospace and aviation. So again, airplanes are cool. It was to give something back to the communities. And then the second spin, or third spin, I should say, we put onto it was to garner support from the communities in so much as to have them competing with the community down the road. So as an example, we have a grudge match between Edmonton and Calgary. There's some of those rivalries in some of the areas. And when I pitched them on the idea, it was, okay, if I'm bringing you 60 to 80 new people to your area, what would you do to put your best foot forward, both on the residential side, some of your community support services, what you have for business, chambers of commerce, tourism at its finest? Why would we want to come back? And moreover, why would they want to stay there? And by the way, not go to the place down the road. So that friendly competition fired up something that was, quite frankly, magical. And then we started also to look at supporting airports that needed some TLC. And then like Lloydminster, to showcase ones that have got a gold star, that are literally above the standard and that others should emulate to be like.
Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Air Tour will be making its first stop here in the city of Lloydminster. Can you just tell me a little bit as to why Lloydminster was chosen as that first stop specifically?
Well, it's special, near and dear to my heart. I came down December 5th and was on a Sean Newman podcast. Ended up getting weathered in, so we ran out of daylight. The gig in television, radio. Sometimes the technical difficulties push out your interviews. What happened there was the guys in the field at Border Aviation, absolute epitome of Alberta hospitality. They made a place for me in their hangar, so when it turned -25 the next morning, I didn't have an ice frozen airplane. So when I started regaling that story to other folks, they just said the same thing. Lloydminster is phenomenal. It's one of those most underrated airports. You have a beautiful terminal building there. You can get, regular scheduled services going in and out. It's an oil town. You have industry behind it. You have the ag. Just absolutely wonderful. And that's why it became really close and dear to our heart on the first stop, quite frankly, was to bring that attention and to give a chance to give back to Lloyd for the good old Alberta hospitality.
I understand that you're really big into the aerospace and aviation industry and whatnot. So can you just tell me a little bit about when did that first strike interest for you?
Well, probably the first time when I was about 5 years old, picking rocks in the field and looking up at an airplane fly overhead, thinking that would be fun to do. So there's that hook. I mean, obviously with that, just as a little guy looking up, and then somebody took me under their wing, all pun intended, and said, here, you can do these things and you can get your aircraft. And as a farm kid, that sometimes seemed really without a reach. We didn't come from a very rich family or anything at all. It was, pretty modest. But I kept getting exposed to aircraft aviation. That community was very supporting. And the long and the short of it, it took me a long time to get my license because I was busy with life and work and everything else, but I got it. And I'll tell you what, there is no better place to be is in the air on God's doorstep, looking over our province and some of the most beautiful country that you've ever seen, to get you hooked on aviation. And the other one too is because we live in such a big territory and province, I can shorten up my trips and my distances and my time to get out and see folks, and quite frankly, to get back home, where you just can't do that with vehicles or to go through commercial air travel. So I can shamelessly jump in my plane, be in Calgary from Lloydminster within an hour, go to my meetings, and then pop back home on the other side of Edmonton. And I've only killed about 2.5, 3 hours of traveling at most, versus driving all day long.
Well, Shane, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I truly appreciate it. And I will hope to see you there on Saturday.
Perfect. Thanks a bunch. Take care.